So the leadership that we're going to go through today for the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell is the law of the Big Mo. The law of the Big Mo. And the law of the Big Mo says momentum is a leader's best friend. Momentum is the leader's best friend. We saw this on Saturday night when the D-backs played Texas.
That's right.
And they got momentum. And what happened was everybody started cracking the ball.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it was just person after person and catch and play and throw. And it just all of a sudden they just caught the wind and it just ran with it and doubled down. And so you just see that happen all the time. You know, if you try to get a train and you want to move the train, you know, and it doesn't have the engine, it takes a while to like move that thing going. And all of a sudden, you know, it's like nothing could stop it once it goes. You put something on the train track, it's just going to crack it out of the way or break it. But, you know, if all of a sudden you're just barely moving it, it could just take a couple of quarters to stop it from moving.
Yeah.
So the law of the Mo plays out in every facet of our life. It just happens to be a true statement when it comes to leadership for business, is that we're always trying to have the law of the Big Mo. Mike actually talked about this at the retreat, if you guys remember that. And there's three elements to creating momentum. And I want you guys to really hang on to these. The first one is passion. So here's the equation. So passion plus persistence plus progress equals momentum. So let me say that again. Passion plus persistence plus progress equals momentum. That's the formula. That's the ingredients that goes into the momentum bucket of the law of the Big Mo. The first one, passion, equals energy. Okay. So the fire within you begins with the fire outside. So that fire that you need to have, the passion that you need to bring to the table is necessary in order for you to have momentum. People don't follow people that don't have passion. It means they don't have to be screaming from the rooftops, but there has to be a conviction and a passion and a fire within to do what needs to be done in order to go where you need to go. So passion is the first ingredient in the law of the Big Mo that is necessary for you to create momentum in any place within business, quite frankly, anywhere outside of there too. The second one is persistence. So persistence is that momentum requires many pushes, okay? So momentum requires many, many pushes. Takes a lot of just continuing every day. You know, Jeff Bezos calls this day one. Every day is day one. You're coming in and you're pushing, making those calls, having those conversations, making sure there's momentum. We're having this right now. We're trying to get the law of the Big Mo going. We've got to push every day. And then eventually you start to get momentum. But then you say, how did we get momentum? How did the D-backs get momentum? Well, it started years ago, right? Lots of little pushes over and over and over. And eventually here they are in this position because of all those grinding days, the difficult times, the early mornings, the practices, the videos, all those things, because they kept persisting and pushing. And eventually momentum happens from that. Just pushing. You could call it grinding, daily work, all of those things that are necessary. And then the third one is progress, okay? So this fuels momentum and it fuels it more. So once you start to see that progress and you're going, okay, we're getting traction, right? And that fuels more and more and more of this thing called the law of the big Mo. So you got this passion, you've got persistence that's necessary, then you start to see some progress, and you need to feed off of that by going back to the first two P's. Do you remember how we used to say, John and always say, the greatest enemy of success is what? Success. Greatest enemy of success is success, because you just go, can settle in, take a break and relax, kick my feet up. I made it. And next thing you know, you got your knock blocked off, right? Because you're like, wait a minute, what happened? So those three things are necessary to have momentum. So what do you guys think about those three? Passion, persistence, progress.
I like the persistence, and that was a great analogy what you just said with the Diamondbacks. I mean, here they're in the World Series, and people forget the years of 110 losses just last year. So I like this, the persistence, the repetitive. I hate to use the word grinding, but just doing your daily tasks and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, to reach your success.
You okay?
Yeah. Hold on, guys. Gave his wife called twice, so he's just checking.
I don't even know.
So yeah, I think that another thing to keep in mind too is like you can't have momentum, because passion, persistence, and progress, they all go hand in hand. Because if you're not passionate about something, you won't be persistent about it, and that won't lead to progress. So it's like when you have passion about it, you're going to be excited about it, which leads to persistence to the progress. So you're just going to keep driving.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's cumulative, meaning you don't have a deep why, you don't have a really conviction of why you're doing what you're doing. You're not going to have passion. And then if you don't have passion, then you're not going to persist. And then henceforth, you're not going to have progress. Correct. So it's good. It is compounding and cumulative. Yeah. It's good.
I wonder if it's yes, you need all three, but I wonder if one feeds into the other. Like, can you start without one, or heavy weighted on one? Like, his passion is like, it's personal. But if you work at something and you make a lot of progress, it then becomes personal, because it's your results you're seeing. So you could then get passion from progress, or if you put a lot of time into something through persistence, you could probably build passion, because you're at least putting your time and your thought and your energy into it, which would possibly build passion. Like, I wonder, how that dynamic could work. Like, if you came in something with tons of passion, it's probably going to push the other two. But if you came into something with no progress or no passion, but you just made a lot of progress, would you build up the passion and then build momentum that way?
Yeah, it's a great point, Tom. And I think there's some truth to that, because I remember a mentor of mine said once, when I was early in my marriage, I was kind of whining a little bit. And he said, well, what did you do when you were first dating? And I said, well, I did da 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 da. Yeah. He said, well, do those things. He just kind of was basically saying, stop whining and just do those things that you once did that produced the thing that you got, right? Yeah. And it was a great moment of reflection for me and correction for me, to recognize sometimes you just need to do the things that you need to do that will eventually produce those results, right? Because if we waited until we felt a certain way, we probably wouldn't do it. I have those conversations with my kids all the time. I said, growing up and maturing means you're going to do things even though you don't feel like doing them, right? And so it is true, Tom. It's a good point that sometimes you need to just persist and keep going. Yeah. And that actually can be a producer of not only results, but also passion. So it's a really good point. It's very true. Yeah, there is this kind of circular component, and you kind of which one engages the first. So it's great.
Yeah, I don't think you have momentum without passion, but I wonder,
sure.
if you can
build
it that way. Yeah.
Now here's an interesting thing to think about. John says, momentum makes you think you're better than you are.
That's right.
So it's a great thing. It can also be a dangerous thing because it can make you think you're better than you are.
Yeah.
Because once you get momentum, you actually there's something that happens that actually makes you accomplish more things, and it makes you better than you think you are. Okay,
it's a good point. It's like when I look at terrible sports teams, when they start beating down other opponents, you're like, how are they doing that? And then it's because they have momentum.
Yeah.
And then they look like they're like the big dog, and you're like, wow. But then it takes just a one little switch in momentum.
Yeah.
The other team then hits them. So it can go in a very positive or negative way. So
100%. Yeah. And then he says this thing that's going to make your mind rack a little bit. He says the problem isn't really the problem, but the problem is that you don't know the problem isn't the problem. So think about that for a minute. He says the problem isn't really the problem, but the problem is that you don't know the problem isn't the problem. It's going to make your mind rock a little bit, isn't it? But what he's saying is that when you run into a problem, trying to get momentum and trying to figure things out, a lot of times the problem isn't the problem. The problem is that you don't know what the problem is. Okay. Which is why we go through these exercises of trying to reflect and drill down on what is the real problem, and spending the time.
Can you repeat that one more time? Just because it's a tongue teaser.
It is. The problem isn't really the problem, but the problem is that you don't know the problem isn't the problem. See that? So the bifurcation of those two things is what he's trying to delineate. Problem isn't really the problem. The problem is you don't know that the problem is the problem. So this idea of a lack of understanding of what the problem might really be is the problem. Okay. So that you're going to see that happen a lot of times. It's happened to me before. I'm like, this is the problem. Chances are is probably wrong on that. And so you have to recognize to go bring other people into the whole thing, because that's necessary for you to create momentum. If you don't understand what the problem is, then, which is why we just went through this exercise. What is the problem, right? And I told you, you got to drill down and really, really say, what is the problem? Because then you can start to solve for it. But until that, you could be completely off. Okay. So this is a fun one to think about. Leaders build momentum knowing that it will build momentum and solve, here we go, problems. Okay, so you're always going to have problems, but momentum will help you solve the problems. We're dealing with that right now. We're going to create momentum. Managers try to solve problems and they don't build momentum. Okay. So what he's saying is, just building momentum is a solving issue of a problem. Just getting things going, taking the passion, taking the persistence, taking the sort of progress helps you solve a lot of problems when you're just moving and going and doing and creating momentum. That can solve a lot of problems that you run into.
That's right.
And then momentum makes leaders, right? He says, look better than they are, but good leaders create the big mo. Bad leaders try to catch it. Okay. So, there's, as a leader, your job is to continue to create momentum and move things and push it. Another way to think about this on the leadership challenge is challenge the process. It's another way to think about it. You inspire a shared vision and you challenge the process. And by challenging the process, what you're doing is you're doing this. You're bringing passion, you're poking holes, you're trying to create momentum so that things will move in a particular direction. So that's the law of the big mo that we have as a